The numbers didn't lie. But they weren't telling the whole truth either. Jordan Wells sat alone in the executive suite, the glow from her dual monitors casting shadows across the dim office. It was nearly midnight. The city skyline twinkled behind her like 1,000 watching eyes. The last of the staff had gone home hours ago, but she was still here, pulling thread after thread from a financial sweater that was beginning to unravel. At first, the discrepancy looked like a rounding error. Then a duplication. Then a transfer that didn't make sense. She flagged the transaction, then traced it, and another, and another. The deeper she went, the clearer the pattern became. Money had been siphoned from a discretionary expense fund and rerouted through internal vendors, authorized by someone with high-level access. And the digital trail led straight to Eli Rivers. 28. Fresh MBA from Wharton, hired last year into financial strategy. Jordan never liked him. Too smug, too quick with excuses, too interested in optics and not enough in substance. He had charm, the kind that got him invited to all the right meetings but didn't sit well with her. She believed in results, in integrity, in the long game. Her father had taught her that. She remembered one meeting in particular, just a few months into his tenure, where Eli had openly challenged her in front of the senior team during a quarterly strategy review. He had sauntered in 5 minutes late, iced latte in hand, and proceeded to deliver a slick, overconfident presentation about cutting legacy programs to streamline operations. His slides were polished, but his logic was shallow. When Jordan raised concerns about how his plan would affect long-standing vendor relationships and frontline morale, Eli didn't just disagree, he smirked. "Sometimes the sacred cows need to go," he had said, with a shrug and a sideways glance that earned a few nervous chuckles from around the room. Jordan had kept her expression neutral, but her jaw clenched. She had built many of those sacred cows with blood, sweat, and sleepless nights. And watching a newcomer dismiss them with a smug remark told her everything she needed to know. From that day on, she kept a mental file on Eli Rivers, not just his work but his attitude, his ambition, his angles. Now, Eli was at the center of a financial mess that threatened the company's reputation. Jordan leaned back in her chair, stretching her arms above her head and rolling her neck to ease the tension. Her gaze drifted to the photo on her desk, her and her father, Thomas Wells, at the company's 25th anniversary gala. She had been fresh out of college, nervous in her tailored blazer. Thomas had been proud. She remembered how he'd raised a toast to her, saying, "This company will be in even better hands with the next generation." And she remembered something else, long before either of them dreamed she would become CEO. She was still a teenager, shadowing him one summer to learn the ropes of the business. One afternoon, they'd sat in his office after a heated call with a supplier that had breached contract terms. Jordan had wanted him to retaliate immediately, to cancel the agreement and go public with the wrongdoing. But Thomas had leaned back, laced his fingers together and said, "Integrity isn't just about what you do when people are watching. It's about doing the right thing when it would be easier, faster, or even smarter to do the wrong one. We don't cut corners here, not even when it costs us, especially then, because our name goes on everything we touch." That conversation had etched itself into her memory. Her father, the firm but fair architect of the company's principles, had passed on more than a legacy. He had passed on a compass, and she had tried to follow it. Jordan sighed and pulled her focus back to the spreadsheets. It wasn't just the money, it was the implications, investor confidence, regulatory scrutiny. A scandal like this could undo years of stability, and if she was wrong, if she mishandled it, it could tarnish the legacy her father had spent a lifetime building. The next morning, Jordan stood at the head of the boardroom table, her posture perfect, her tone even. "There's been a breach," she began, hands resting on the edge of the table, a series of unauthorized financial transfers totaling just over $1.2 million. Murmurs, raised eyebrows, phones pulled out, then tucked away. The board leaned in. "We believe the access used belongs to Eli Rivers," she continued. "There's enough evidence to warrant an internal investigation. I recommend we suspend him immediately pending the outcome." One of the board members, James Blakely, furrowed his brow. "Eli? That doesn't sound like him." "I agree," said Helen Tran, a retired CFO. "The kid's green but not malicious." "Are we sure this isn't a mistake?" Jordan kept her face unreadable. "I'm never sure until I'm certain, which is why I'm not asking to terminate. We'll hold off on the suspension. Let my team dig further, but I wanted you to hear it from me first." There were nods. No one wanted to be on the wrong side of a scandal. After the meeting, she went straight to her office and closed the door. Then, she picked up her phone. "Jerry," she said, speaking to her most trusted IT analyst, "I need everything we have on Eli's logins, every keystroke, and cross-check vendor approvals from the last year against archived signatures." Jerry didn't ask why. He never did. They had worked together since her early days in operations, back when she was still proving herself in a company that whispered about nepotism behind her back. Jerry had been one of the few who judged her by her work and not her last name. Meticulous, loyal, and almost surgically precise when it came to systems architecture, he'd once found a buried malware string that a third-party auditor had missed entirely. After that, he was her go-to for anything that mattered. If there was a thread to follow, Jerry would follow it to the end and burn it clean. By the time the sun dipped below the horizon, she had what she needed. And it wasn't what she expected. Eli's access had been cloned. His password reset logs didn't match the IP addresses of his devices. The approvals were doctored, subtle discrepancies in spacing, font alignment. The work of someone smart. Someone careful. But not someone young. Jordan sat back in her chair, her spine stiff with realization. One signature looked too familiar. The loops in the capital J, the downward tilt in the W. It was her father's handwriting. She stared at the screen for a full minute, her stomach turning to stone. Thomas Wells, founder, visionary, her predecessor, her father, the man who taught her how to ride a bike, how to negotiate a contract, how to win. Thomas had retired 2 years ago but kept an office on the executive floor. He had always been the company. Even now, his presence lingered in policy documents, how meetings were run, and the cautious optimism with which employees discussed change. That night, Jordan took the elevator up to the corner suite most employees had forgotten existed, with a gold plaque that read Founder and Chairman Emeritus. The hallway smelled faintly of cigars and pine-scented polish. She knocked once before pushing open the heavy door. Thomas sat at his desk, sleeves rolled to the elbows, buried in paper. A ledger lay open beside a tumbler of whiskey. He looked up, startled, but recovered quickly. "Jordan," he said, smiling, "you're burning the midnight oil too, huh?" She didn't return the smile. "I found the discrepancies." Her father froze. "I thought it was Eli. Everything pointed to him, but it was too perfect, too convenient. So I looked closer." Thomas stood slowly. "Let's talk about this." "There's nothing to talk about." She stepped inside, closing the door behind her. "You rerouted company funds, created ghost vendors, used Eli's credentials to make it look like him. Why?" His eyes, so much like hers, flickered. "To keep it afloat, to clean up old debts, to protect the name. Your name, our name," he corrected. She shook her head. "You were going to let me fire an innocent man. Let the company believe he betrayed us, just to cover your tracks?" He took a step forward. "I built this from nothing, Jordan. I made sacrifices you can't imagine. You think I like doing it? I had no choice." Jordan's voice dropped. "You always have a choice. You chose to lie, to steal, to use me." Her father sat back down, suddenly looking tired, smaller, older. His hands trembled slightly as he reached for his glass, but he didn't drink. Instead, he stared into the amber liquid as if it held answers. "I thought I could fix it before anyone noticed," he said. "Just a little borrowed time, that's all I needed. We had obligations, commitments, and the new leadership, your leadership, was pushing us into uncharted territory. I thought if I could just stabilize things, quietly, it would all be fine." "You taught me better than that," she said, her voice tight with emotion. "You told me integrity mattered more than pride, that shortcuts leave scars. And yet here you are, taking shortcuts in my name." He looked up at her, something like shame flickering behind his eyes. "I underestimated you, Jordan. I thought you'd be so focused on growth and optics, you'd miss the dust under the rug. But you saw it, and you came straight to me." "Because you're my father," Jordan said, "and because I can't protect this company and cover for you at the same time." He nodded slowly. "What happens now?" he asked. Jordan took a breath. "You resign, effective immediately. I'll tell the board it's health-related. You keep your legacy. Barely. But you're done." Thomas didn't argue. Jordan turned to leave, then paused. "By the way, Eli stays. He never knows. That guilt, that shame, that's yours to carry, not his." Downstairs, as she passed the glass atrium, she saw Eli walking out with colleagues, laughing, carefree, backpack slung over one shoulder, iced coffee in hand. He didn't see her, didn't know how close he'd come to being ruined, didn't know how close she had come to believing the wrong story. Jordan watched for a moment, then turned away. Justice had been served, but it didn't feel like victory. A week later, Jordan called a closed-door session with the board. It was a rare move, one that garnered tense anticipation. Helen Tran was the first to arrive. Jordan motioned for her to stay after the others left. When the room had cleared, Jordan handed her a file and said, "Eli's cleared. It wasn't him. It was my father." Helen's expression didn't register shock, just a quiet understanding. She opened the folder, reviewed the evidence, and let out a long breath. "And the money?" "Returned in full. Quietly. No damage done yet." Helen nodded slowly. "So we have a choice. Protect a man who built this company, or let the scandal unravel everything he left behind." Jordan met her eyes. He resigned. Health reasons. No one needs to know more than that. Not even Eli. At the next full board meeting, Helen took the lead. Further review revealed the breach was the result of a system misconfiguration, since resolved. Eli was not at fault. The board thanks him for his continued diligence. There were nods around the table. Eli, who was not present, was officially cleared, quietly, permanently. The story stayed buried, just beneath the marble and glass of the company her father built. Sometimes the fall guy never falls, and the one who should have already did. Later that night, Jordan sat alone in her office, lights dimmed. The city beyond the windows glittered like a sea of silent witnesses. Her heels were off, feet curled beneath her on the couch where she had once taken afternoon power naps as an executive in training. A cup of untouched tea sat on the table beside her. She thought about everything, the missteps, the truth, the burden of silence. Her father's words haunted her even as they no longer held power. "Our name," he had said, but now it was hers alone to bear. Had she done the right thing? There was no guidebook for justice in blood ties, no case study in the MBA curriculum on how to dismantle your hero without crumbling yourself. All she knew was that the company had been protected. Eli had been spared. The story had ended before it could spiral. Still, a quiet grief curled inside her. Grief for the father she used to know, grief for the certainty she used to carry. She looked out the window one last time before turning off the lights. Tomorrow, there would be meetings, decisions, forecasts to review. The company would go on, and so would she. But tonight, she allowed herself to sit in the silence, and mourned the version of her father who had taught her to never cut corners, and the version of herself who had still believed he never would. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like. We look forward to bringing you more engaging stories. Be sure to hit the subscribe button so you're the first to know when new stories are published. Liking and sharing the channel helps us grow and makes it possible for us to keep creating great content.